Hey everyone, Parallel here. Welcome to Star Trek Online. You are looking at the Tier 6 Fleet Mata Raptor. This is going to be a build video for this ship, and I'm going to focus on the updates to this build as of Season 13 Escalation. There were a lot of changes to space combat, and so this build was pretty heavily impacted. I actually used this build in my previous video for the Mirror Universe Invasion event, and I got a lot of questions regarding the details of this build. So I thought I'd go ahead and create this video and explain the build that I was using in this video and give everyone a chance to see, to see how it breaks down. All right, so this is going to be a bit of an abridged video. I'm just going to focus on the changes for Season 13. I will go through the full video and explain the entire build, but this time I'm just going to do a quick Argala run, and I will show a parse from an ISA run that I did the other day, so I will try to keep it as short as possible. All right, so yeah, the Fleet Mata Raptor. This is actually a pretty old ship. This was one of the first Tier 6 vessels that came out with a Delta Rising expansion, and it is an Intel-based ship. And part of the reason I love this ship, and I think that one of its biggest strengths, is that it has the best spinal cannon out of any ship in the game. It's really an amazing console on this ship. So the console is the spinal cannon. You can even kind of see it here on the ship itself. It has these two cannons poking out the front. Looks absolutely deadly. It's an amazing looking ship. But yeah, those spinal cannons are absolutely incredible. They are disruptor based damage, and they actually, unlike most spinal cannons, which just have a single shot for, just one single burst on a single ship, they usually do heavy damage, but then you only get that one shot and then you're on cooldown for 2 minutes. But in this case, on the Mata Raptor, it actually has a spinal cannon that has a AoE effect, and it has a duration. So once you activate the console, it will actually fire the cannons for I think it's 6 seconds or so, and it will hit everything in an AoE for that entire time. It actually doesn't even require a target. It will actually hit everything in that frontal arc. Think of it sort of as a cannon scatter volley without a target, and it just puts out massive damage for those several seconds while it's firing. So it has a lot of advantage over just like a regular single shot lance. And that's what I think makes this ship so much fun. I referred to this as my favorite KDF vessel in the previous video, and that is very much true. It's fun to fly. It flies like an escort. It's a little bit tougher than an escort. It is a Raptor class vessel, so it's kind of like in that area of where a destroyer would be with. It does have a base 48,000 hull at level 60, so a little bit tougher than an escort. Whereas it slightly has turn rate of 15 base, so slightly less than most escorts, but still very maneuverable. So it's very fun to fly, a little bit tougher than an escort, and just comes with the best spinal lance in the game. So it really is a fantastic ship to fly, a lot of fun. All right, so let's get into the actual build here. So I will go through each aspect of the build. I'll go through all of the gear, skills, the traits that I'm using, and the bridge officer stations. I'll also show my duty officers. But like I said, I want to go through it a little more quickly. I'm not going to go through everything in the nth level of detail, but I do want to at least give everyone a chance to see an overview. All right, so this is a disruptor-based build, and I am using the crafted disruptors, dual heavy cannons. The reason I went with dual heavy cannons is that, believe it or not, in Season 13, there was actually a fix where the dual heavy cannon bonus that they get, that 10% crit severity, you see it all the way at the bottom on the tooltip there. Believe it or not, for a long time, that was actually broken, where you would not get that crit severity bonus during weapon skills like cannon scatter volley. And this whole build is based around cannon scatter volley and using those spinal cannons all together for just massive, frontal firepower in that 45-degree arc. It just annihilates everything. So being that is what the build is based around, for a long time I was thinking about using just regular dual cannons, but with Season 13, with now the fix where you get that crit severity bonus, for dual heavy cannons, and it actually works during cannon scatter volley, I thought this was a perfect opportunity to go ahead with the dual heavies. So you can see this is the crafted variant. They do have pen and damage X3. You can actually, you could put like, if you wanted to go all out for a super expensive build, you could go with coalition disruptors here. That probably would be superior to the crafted ones, but I was kind of going for a theme here, right? This is kind of my alt that I like to have more strictly Klingon, so I wanted to go with the good old classic green colored, heavy disruptors. So these are the crafted version. Now I did throw in here the Terran Task Force disruptor dual heavy cannon. This is the reputation cannon you get from the Terran Task Force, and it is an incredibly powerful dual heavy cannon because it actually scales up as the target's health decreases. So when the health of the target is at 25%, it's actually doing 200% damage. This thing hits like a truck on low health enemies. Very much worth it. And I am also using the Nausicaan energy torpedo, which of course is also disruptor based. This is a fantastic torpedo, and with Season 13, this thing has been performing extremely well. This, along with the crystalline energy torpedo for anti-proton builds, it's been doing really well. All of my parses, this thing is really holding its weight. There's an awesome starship trait that goes with this that I will show when I get to my traits, called supercharged weapons, so I'll get to that soon. But even on its own, even without the trait, it's still doing excellent damage with torp spread, and it's very much holding up with, having to give up a cannon slot for this torpedo has proven to be very much worth it in most of the parses that I've done. So there it is. And this is a 5 forward and then 2 aft weapon layout ship, which, just screams for, heavy frontal firepower. In my original build, I was using dual beam banks, which also works very well, but I wanted to go with the cannon build just for fun. Now, I am using, for my space set, I'm using the 4-piece Iconian. I still really like the 4-piece clicky that you get, which is Radiant Subatomic Pulse. Because it gives a little bit of survivability with that extra max hull, and it also gives a 33% all damage bonus. So it's still a really good clicky. So I've been having a hard time giving up my 4-piece Iconian. I know a lot of people have tried other builds. A lot of people have been moving to the Terran Task Force Warp Core, which is quite good in Season 13 now because of the extra power it gives. I am tempted to swap out my Deflector and Impulse for the Nukara set. The 2-piece Nukara set is really good now in Season 13. I believe it's a 5% all damage buff, Cat 2. So that's another option you could do, but I just still really like my 4-piece Iconian. I still like the hot restarts, even though the hot restarts were nerfed with a 60-second cooldown. They still do a great job. I particularly like them on this ship because I do run override subsystem safeties, and it's good for bringing your systems back online after that. So I have stuck with the Iconian set. All right, so, and in the aft, of course, you got 2 turrets sitting back here. Again, crafted, so just this one's a crit D3 pen. Now I am actually running in my heavy weapon slot the flak shot artillery. This is from the new reputation. This is from the competitive war games reputation. During the last upgrade weekend, I did get this thing up to Epic, and it performs decently well. I think it's still slightly below the Cation railgun that you get from the Cation ship, but I'm not really interested in buying that escort bundle right now, so I thought I would just go with this one. And this thing still does perform quite well. Certainly a lot better than the default heavy escort weapon that you get from the Dilithium store. So you see in the parse how much damage it does. It seems to do okay, although not amazing, but it's worth slotting at least. So this ship does only come with 2 device slots, which is kind of funny. That's not very much. I think it basically had to give up something for its excellent weapon layout and general performance. So you only get your 2 device slots. I'm using a red matter capacitor and the temporal negotiator. That was from the Delta recruitment event. Just good for giving you those cooldowns, giving you it does have a long cooldown itself, but you can hit that and, you know, refresh all your cooldowns to help you at least once during a run. All right, so in the consoles, now this console layout for this ship is 4 engineering, 2 science, and 5 tactical. So here is the console for this ship that it comes with. This is the heavy disruptor spinal cannons. And it's actually 7 seconds, not 6. All right, so that's even better than I thought. So for 7 seconds, it will hit 5 targets and will pulse every 0.5 seconds for that 45-degree arc in front of you. And that's why it's so much better than most other spinal lances, which are just a one single shot on a one target. This thing will hit a massive area and can pump out insane amounts of damage and actually pulls its weight as a console. So yeah, it's amazing. It does have the passive 15% disruptor damage, so it is good for a disruptor build. It's only Cat 1. It's not huge, but you know, it's there at least when it's on cooldown. I am also using the dynamic power redistribution module. This is from the you can get this from the lock boxes. You can actually, so if you get this on the exchange, you can actually get it in a pack for Romulan and KDF, in a console pack that is actually fairly affordable. Now, if you want to get this on a Federation character, you have to get it from you have to actually get the Atlas ship, which is I believe it's the Temporal Dreadnought pack. So you'll have to actually buy that ship, which is quite expensive. So getting this on a Federation character is quite difficult, but on a Romulan or Klingon, you can get it from just the pack. You don't have to get the ship, and it's quite affordable on the exchange. It's an amazing console. It gives you the all damage resistance rating and directed energy damage passives, and its clicky is also amazing. It gives a 40% damage bonus that gets constantly reapplied if you're over 80% health. So very, very good. It also gives you a nice survivability bonus with the plus 100% bonus damage resistance rating for 20 seconds, and then the hull regen for 20 seconds. So it's a really awesome console. It's very good for offense and defense. And you know, now with Season 13, where you're not trying to slot out all of the embassy consoles, you should have plenty of room for universal consoles, and this is definitely one of the top ones out there. I am also running the timeline stabilizer from the Krenum science vessel. This is a fantastic one it does give you some reduced cooldown on science bridge officer abilities. Not a huge deal on this ship as you're only running just minimal science, but it does also have a very good clicky with improving the fire cycle haste, and gives you some bridge officer and captain ability recharge time reduction. And then yeah, it does do some debuff to the foe as well, but mostly you want it there for the recharge reduction and the fire cycle haste while it's running. So it's a very good console. I am still using the Plasmonic Leech. This was heavily nerfed in Season 13, but it still gives you about 7 power per into each of your subsystems, so it's quite good still. Still worth slotting, I think. Now, as far as science consoles, now that there's no need for embassy consoles as they were nerfed into the ground, I have swapped these out for, in this one, the Temporal Disentanglement Suite. This is a nice science console that gives you some aux power, shield capacity, and a crit chance and crit severity based on your aux power. So it goes up to, as long as you keep your aux power pretty high, which you will once Plasmonic Leech is going in everything, my aux power should be capped out at 100. So this would be, you know, that's giving you a permanent 2.5 crit and 10% crit severity. So pretty decent console. Gives you a little bit of defense, and it also gives you the 3% shield resistance. So it's pretty nice. This one you can get from an episode, so it's pretty easy to do. You can just do an episode replay to get that. Sorry, I don't remember exactly which one it is. And this console as well is from an episode. This is actually one of the more recent ones from the Lucari storyline. This one is the Nausicaan Siphon Capacitor. And this one is particularly good because it does give you power transfer rate, which is very nice. Because I don't have a conductive RCS console. I don't have 120 million to spend on one. So this is a good substitute for that because it does give you some power transfer rate. It does give you disruptor damage, so that's good. And it gives you a little bit of drain expertise, not a huge deal on this particular build, but I do like it for the power transfer rate. So a couple of these you could swap out. I mean, you could put the Borg two-piece in here, which a lot of people are using again. So you could go with like a kinetic cutting beam and then the Borg assimilated module. That'd be another good option. You know, if you want more survivability, you could always throw in the Protomatic Field Projector from the Lucari Science Vessel. So there's some other options you could throw in there. That's kind of a flexible slot. But this is the build I was running. And of course, in the tactical consoles, I am throwing in the vulnerability locators, 5 of them from the, these are the Spire consoles from your fleet. Yeah, very good for the disruptor damage and for the crit chance. So that is the gear. And if you're wondering as far as visuals go, I am actually using the, this is the Klingon Honor Guard shield, which I think looks absolutely fantastic on this ship. And this deflector visual is from the Iconian deflector, which I think matches it pretty well. Looks pretty cool there. Just goes really, really well with his vessel. This looks really nice in the Klingon Honor Guard. Very sleek looking Raptor. So as far as the Starship Mastery, this gets the standard escort package. Unfortunately, it doesn't get the destroyer package, which I believe is slightly better because it also gives the crit severity. But this does come with just the standard escort package. So you get your accuracy, you get your defense, kinetic and energy damage, and then your final one is your crit chance. All right, so as far as my skills, I am using a very heavily tactical focused skill. I'm using the tactical ultimate. You can see here, Focus Frenzy. I am only, yeah, I did get all 3 in Focused Frenzy. Now, this was kind of my free respec that I did after Season 13 because of all of the rework. They did get a free respec. And I'm not sure if I'm super happy with this build. I might swap a few things around. I am actually liking the deep tactical tree. I do like putting some into projectiles now that I'm actually using torpedoes in the build. But I'm starting to think I probably should take some out of my science and moving them more over into engineering. In particular, this hull plating one is a very good trait now. The hull resistance is nice. As part of Season 13, it's actually, you need to slot a bit more on the defense side as all of the NPCs are doing more damage. Based on the weapon power scaling, how it works now is NPCs always had all of their power levels set at 50. And since the power scaling now for weapons power is actually increased if your weapons power is below 100, it's actually a pretty significant buff to NPC damage across the board. So plus you don't have the fleet buff, doesn't give resistances anymore. So you're just a bit more squishy in Season 13. So it might be a good idea to slot more into hull plating, maybe taking some out of my science tree and putting it over there. Though, yeah, the shielding is actually nice too, so it's a hard call. But this is the build I'm using, so just very deep into tactical. A little bit of engineering. I do get 1 point in engineering readiness just to keep my emergency power to weapons and emergency power to shields at minimum cooldown. So they're up permanently. I am using a Drake build, which I will show later. A lot of people did ask about what a Drake build is, so I'll try to explain that as well. So there is the build. Just go, full tactical, go into full focused frenzy, and you will be all set. Didn't mean to hit that. Okay, as far as traits, let's go down here to space traits. I am running, so yeah, fleet coordinator is very good. A blade of shell for the defense. Like I said, you do need to, you do need to strengthen your defenses in Season 13. So I am actually running this as a defensive trait. It is actually quite good. A blade of shield, a blade of shell, and one of my Doffs, Agent Nerul. Sorry, let's pull up my roster here. It's actually Agent Ayal on the KDF side, or Agent Nerul on the Federation side. But he is actually gives you a self-heal whenever you have attack pattern beta going. And if you actually look at my parses, you'll see that Ablative Shell and Agent Rule are actually my 2 top healing. They heal more than Ox to Sif and Hazard Emitter. So those are actually 2 pretty decent traits. Ablative Shell is actually fairly affordable now. You can get this off the exchange because it is a lockbox trait. I am running Operative for the extra crit. Inspirational Leader, again, another lockbox ability you can get off the exchange. This is a very good trait for boosting lots of starship skills. Since this is a cannon build, I am using Cannon Training. I am using a Good Day to Die. This is a very good trait, particularly in Season 13, because of now with the reduced cooldown on your Go Down Fighting, and the fact that now Go Down Fighting will continually recalculate his damage bonus based on your current health. Basically, this means that I think a good day to die is just so good now that it's just better to just use Go Down Fighting off cooldown, even if you're not below the 50% health, because it's really hard to keep your health low to get the damage bonus, because if your health ever goes back above 50%, you're just going to get that flat damage bonus. So it's a 50% all damage bonus that increases as you get low hull, but it will continue to recalculate even if your hull goes back up, and you don't want to be flying around at low hull because you will get killed. This isn't like the old days where you could just do it, a slot invincibility trait, go down to 1 hull, pop this, and then you'd have a full duration Go Down Fighting with maximum damage bonus. It doesn't work like that anymore. Now it will recalculate dynamically based on how much health you have. Given that's the case, it's just better just to use this thing off cooldown. Don't even worry about what your current health is. Just use it on cooldown and get as much damage out of it as you can. Because it's still, even at 50% of a damage bonus, that's still really good. So Good Day to Die, you can get that off the exchange as well. Point Blank Shot is actually quite good. I believe there was a fix related to this as well. I think maybe that was with Beamfire at Will. There were some weapon abilities where this was not working properly, but that was fixed in Season 13, so this is a good trait. Self-modulating fire is still good for the shield pen. And I do use Anchored. I'm debating this. I would like to eventually swap this out for, I believe, Fluidic Cocoon. If you have Fluidic Cocoon, I'd probably put that here instead of Anchored. Anchor does make you a bit squishy. It is actually really good for stacking up when you are, if you just get at range and stand still and blast away with your cannon scatter and volley. This is actually very good for that. But also a Fluidic Cocoon I think would be very good here. As far as starship traits, I am using Emergency Weapon Cycle. This is still very good. All Hands on Deck, I went back to using this in Season 13 for the extra recharge time on captain abilities. Now with the with the various nerfs to cooldown reduction and particularly attrition warfare, which I will actually talk about in a minute here, but I did go back to using this just because the extra cooldown reduction is useful again, and it's actually, particularly for the captain abilities, it's actually good for that. I am also using Reciprocity for the cooldown reduction on tactical abilities. This is also very good, particularly in Season 13. I'm trying to not run dual copies of my weapon skills. So I'm only running 1 copy of Cannon Scatter Volley. So I'd like to keep that, I'd like to keep and also only 1 attack pattern beta. And since I don't have Zamoc to reduce that, I do want to run Reciprocity just to give me those few extra ticks to keep it down at the global cooldown. It is nice, but this is one you could probably consider swapping out, particularly if you do have Zamoc. You could probably use that. So this is a Cannon Scatter Volley build. So this is pretty much a mandatory trait if you want to run this build. You need Withering Barrage. You get this from the Tier 6 Escort Bundle. This comes off the core for the Klingons. And the Valiant, I believe, is on the Federation side. And this basically extends the duration of your Cannon Scatter Volley by 4 seconds. That makes it almost permanent. I believe it's only like 1 second of downtime. So this is an excellent trait and gives you almost 100% uptime on Cannon Scatter Volley. Perfect for this build. Supercharged Weapons. This is another trait that I've been using in Season 13 because of how great energy torpedoes are. This trait actually goes very well with them because this will give you a damage bonus, crit chance, and crit severity, and it will stack up to 3 times So it gives you a really nice damage, crit severity, crit chance whenever you launch your torpedoes. And in fact, if you use Torp Spread, which I am using, Torp Spread 2, all the individual torpedoes will stack right away. So one Torp Spread with this and you'll immediately get all 3 stacks, and it works great. As far as reputation traits, Precision for the crit chance, Advanced Targeting System for crit severity. I am running Enhanced Armor Pen for the 5% armor or +5 armor pen. And then I am running Auxiliary Offensive, the Nukara trait, because of the damage bonus that it gives all damage bonus and the accuracy. And then I am also running the Advanced Power Configuration Defense for all of the additional damage, resistance rating, hull hit points, and shield capacity. This is a very good defensive trait. I use this mostly because I want to counteract the debuff from Anchored. If you were going to get rid of Anchored and go with Fluid Cocoon, you probably could use... well, there are a few other ones you could use. I'm trying to think. Yeah, that one's more for PvP, but you could swap this out for potentially another offensive trait if you wanted to. But for this build, I do like having this extra defense because you just feel so much more squishy in Season 13. All right, and I'm just using these standard active reputation traits. One thing I realized I didn't show is my specializations. I am using Intel as my primary. With all of the nerfs to the temporal spec, Intel is much better in Season 13. So it's back to basics here. And this is actually Intel Vessel. Came out with the Intel spec tree back with Delta Rising. So there you go. Now I am actually still using Strategist. It does provide that passive crit bonus when you have Threatening Stance off. And believe it or not, in the run that I'm going to be showing here, the Parse for, I did actually use Threatening Stance and Attrition Warfare. Now, Attrition Warfare was heavily nerfed in Season 13, so now it's only every 30 seconds instead of every 20 seconds, and it gives you less... it gives you less of a bridge officer recharge. Now it's only 20%. I believe it used to be 30. But even then, believe it or not, this is... I don't know. I still have pretty good experience with this. You can't really get the bonus since it's an hour every 30 seconds. You can't really get it every firing, every cycle of your cannon scatter volley and your attack patterns. But it still does help every other cycle, and it still does help for longer cooldown abilities as well. Again, if you have lots of Zamox or something, you might not need this. But I'm still finding that I actually like this. So... use to your flavor. Strategist is still good. You can just leave Threatening Stance off and get the crit bonus, or you can turn it on and use Attrition Warfare for for the cooldown reduction, which is still actually not bad. All right, so Bridge Officers. So this is actually one of the things that I think is one of the downsides of the Mata Raptor is that it only comes with, even though this is a Intel ship, it only comes with one Intel seat, and it's only a lieutenant. So it's a Lieutenant Universal / Intel here, and that's a little bit unfortunate. Yeah, that's a little bit unfortunate that it's that you don't get that you don't get it on the commander. Like, for example, the Romulan Intel ship, the Fayette, actually has the Intel is on the Commander Tactical. So that would have been nice to have it there, but it's unfortunately only on the Universal. And I just realized I should have slotted my SRO here. I do have another Romulan officer with superior Romulan operative trait. That would be actually perfect to put here. I'm actually using Mr. Potato Head here for pirate ability. But, so I just realized I could optimize this build a little bit more and put my third SRO here. So you could have 3 SROs on this build. And as long as you're spec'd into Intel as well, that would actually be an improvement. I'm going to go ahead and make that change. But this was the build I was using, so I'll just continue on here. So override subsystem safeties is still a pretty decent ability now. Now in season 13 they changed it so all ranks will give you a 5-second outage on your subsystems once it wears off. But that's still not too bad with the Iconian. We know with the Iconian set and those hot restarts, it still works out pretty well. And I do like to run 2 copies of this for maximum uptime. Override subsystem safeties is one of those abilities, like, see when I'm running it here, the cooldown does not start until the duration is over. So if you really want to have good uptime on this, you really do need to run 2 copies, which is a little bit unfortunate. But so you do run 2 copies of it there, so I use that as my universal. But otherwise, the seating on this is actually really good. It does come with the Lieutenant Commander Engineering, so you can get 2 emergency powered abilities in there and an Aux to Sif, which is what I'm running here. So I'm actually running emergency powered weapons 3, which is excellent, which of course goes with the Starship trait to keep that emergency weapon cycle going. And then emergency powered to shields. You could also run engines here if you want. Some people do. I do like the little bit of extra survivability you get from the emergency power to shields, and it increases your shield power level as well. So, yep, it is good for that. See, while it's running, yep, it will increase your shield power level. So, does it actually say... It says 20, but I didn't actually see it go up by 20. Let's see if it goes down once it wears off. But anyway, so that is one of the key traits of the Drake build. So as I said, this is actually a Drake build, and part of the Drake build is that you run 2 emergency power abilities. Usually one of them is weapons, and then one other of your choice. And those cycle together with a duty officers that decrease the cooldown. So you can actually keep these 2 up permanently. In fact, I'll just kind of do that now. Well, I'll show that in a minute after this. But so that is a key to the Drake build, running 2 emergency powered abilities. They actually synergize well with the Starship traits anyway, so it works out well. And I went back to this build after, attrition warfare cannot handle all of your cooldown reductions anymore. So you do actually, a lot of people are using Aux to Bat as in season 13 now too. All right, so that is that seat. So now in the Commander Tactical, we are of course using Cannon Scatter Volley 3 because this is the key part of the build. Attack Pattern Beta 2 for the duty officer for getting the healing from that, and also it just works really, really well. Debuffs all the targets, reduces their damage resistance, and gives you lots of extra damage, makes your torps hit harder, makes everything harder. I am using Focused Assault mostly because I'm not actually sure what else to put in here. This is a decent ability. I mostly want to just use it to keep proccing for whenever you use a tactical ability. So just another tactical ability you can use to proc your all hands on deck, and it does help a little bit, especially for hardened targets, like single targets like tac cubes. I'm using a Chemosite Lace Weaponry 1, still a pretty decent ensign level ability. It adds a decent amount of DPS for just an ensign tactical slot. Torp Spread, which is awesome, works great with the Nausicaan Energy Torpedo and the trait for supercharged weapons. And then Attack Team. And then here in the Science seat, we are using just a Science Team and a Hazard Emitters just for the extra shield healing and hull healing. All right, so like I said, I did want to finish up here and show the duty officers. So I am running Agent IL, which is the duty officer from the Delta Rising pack that actually gives you healing when you're using your attack pattern beta. So I am using attack pattern beta, works good. I do have a con officer here to reduce tact team. Very nice for that. Keeps your tact team uptime very good. And then I'm also running 3 damage control engineers. This is the other key part of the Drake build. So the Drake build is you run 2 emergency power abilities and then 3 damage control engineers, which all have a chance to reduce your aux to power. Am I running the wrong one? I think I am. Yeah, these are the ones you're supposed to run. Chance to reduce the time for all emergency power to subsystem abilities. I must have slotted the wrong one. I know I have 3 of these. Aha, that's funny. So I'll have to fix that as well. But you do want to run 3 of these that give you the reduction to your emergency power abilities each time you use one. So they each have a 30% chance to proc each time you trigger it. So there's a pretty good chance that one of these will proc each time, and if one of them does, you will reduce the cooldown time on all of your emergency power abilities and will keep them on the global cooldown. So you'll be able to keep permanently up your emergency power to weapons and emergency power to shields. That's kind of the key of the Drake build. And in my final slot here, I am running a Warp Core Engineer just for the extra bonus to your power levels whenever you use any emergency powered ability, because you are keeping these up permanent. So every 15 seconds, you have an emergency power ability going off. That is a 20% chance proc all of your power levels up plus 25. It's very nice when it goes off. So that is the duty officers, and I will have to remember to fix this one later. So yeah, so that's how the Drake build works. And it actually works really well. So if I do have a macro here where I do just run my emergency power abilities, along with the engineering readiness from the skill tree, it works pretty well. And you'll see they're up pretty much permanently. So there's emergency power to shields. So emergency power weapons has about 10 seconds left on it, and it's 9 seconds. So yeah, this will come off cooldown right when it's about to wear off. That'll keep your emergency weapon cycle trait going. It'll keep everything humming along, and it works great. You see emergency power to shields. It's got 12 seconds left and about 11:10 on its cooldown. So you can see, there you go. That is the Drake build. You keep those up permanently. And so for your tactical cooldowns, you're more depending on your reciprocity and if you're running your threatening stance, your attrition warfare, and then also just the tactical readiness you get from fully speccing into the tac tree. Between all of those sources, you can pretty much get those down to global cooldown with just running 1 copy. If you wanted to be safe with like a Beam Fire at Will build, you could probably run 2 copies of Beam Fire at Will, and that would make you, make sure you're at 100% uptime. But I was finding, I was actually running in some of my Beam builds, running a, Beam Fire at Will 3 and 2, and when I'd look at my Parse, very, very little of the damage was coming from Beam Fire at Will 2. So almost always, this build was enough to proc, to keep your higher, to keep 1 single weapon ability at the global cooldown, or the shared cooldown. So there you go. That is the Drake build. That is the Raptor. So hopefully that explained what I was using in the previous video. And so let's go ahead and head out and see what this build can do in an Argala run. I'll do it on advanced. And then I'll finish off by showing the parts that I did in the ISA, that run that I did the other day, just so you can see how the damage breaks down. But yeah, this ship is just a lot of fun to fly. There are a lot of really good KDF ships out there. A lot of the cruisers are excellent, but when it comes to fun factor, this one is just my favorite. It just, with those spinal cannons and this cannon scatter volley build, it just really feels like a Klingon ship. It feels like a Raptor, that really heavy frontal firepower. Feels like this is the kind of ship that, would sneak up on someone under cloak, decloak, and just unload a massive alpha strike and just annihilate everything. And it's just a hell of a lot of fun. And it is just really effective. On top of being fun, this ship has really held up the test of time. Like I said, this ship came out all the way back with the Delta Rising, one of the first Tier 6 ships ever to come out. And it has just held up really well. Alright, so let's go ahead and cloak up. What do we got here? Malon, alright. So we'll go ahead and buff up a little bit here, decloak, and scatter volley. There you go. You see it makes quite short work. It's just a lot of fun. This, you know, it's just the quintessential Raptor, right? It's like the heavy, you know, like a heavy escort, super frontal firepower just for annihilating everything. Sneak up on them and cloak and just watch them melt. Oh, that one was not in range when I opened up. Yeah, but this is on advanced, and anything on, you know, normal difficulty will just get obliterated in one firing cycle. It just is not going to survive. Now, the one disadvantage that I do not like about cannons is the... Fortunately, the firing cycles just seem to get desynced. And I know Tactical Team does somewhat mess with your firing cycle because of the shield balancing that goes on. So you got to be careful of that. But other than that, cannons just have a lot more damage in that frontal arc than beams do. You know, when you're running an ISA, beams are actually very effective just because, you know, the spawns can be kind of spread out. And, you know, beams just kind of hit everything without having to pilot very much. So cannon builds are actually a lot harder to pilot. But there's no question that, you know, when enemies are in your frontal arc, you are doing way more damage with cannons. Than with beams. So this is just a hell of a lot of fun. Okay, so what I'm going to do is for this last one, I will show you the spinal cannon here. So we're going to cloak up. I'm going to buff up to the max, and then I'm going to unload with the spinal cannon, and you'll just watch everything melt here. Okay, so here we go. Spinal cannon's away. Yeah, it's already dead. You can see the spinal cannons are still firing. I mean, they don't even need a target. You can just, like, point at things and they just melt instantly. So, yeah. That is the Mata Raptor. I mean, it's basically the quintessential cannon ship. With that spinal cannon, you just utterly vaporizes everything. Yeah, there's just, you can't complain about that. It's just pure power, and it's just awesome. In fact, I'm gonna let it cool down here. I'm just gonna show it to you here, just in case you were interested to see the, you know, the actual visual effect of it. Because, I mean, everything died so quickly there, I don't know that you actually got a chance to see it. But it does have a, you know, it does have the 2-minute cooldown, but it also does, it does give you that passive disruptor damage bonus. So at least it's doing something while it's on cooldown. But the parse, it does parse incredibly well. If you're running an ISA, when you get the spheres that spawn, you can unload this into that whole group of spheres, and it will just do, you know, an amazing amount of damage, and it'll be well worth. I mean, it pulls its weight as a console, doing as much damage as, like, well, it does almost as much damage as, like, the Nausicaan torpedo, maybe, you know, 8 to 9K on the runs that I do. If you get a good, you know, if you get a really good bundle of spheres unloaded with this thing, it will do an amazing amount of DPS. Alright, so here we go. A few more seconds and we'll show this again. But yeah, it just fits this ship so well. I wonder, can I show this? I don't know if I hide the UI, if I can then do it. Yeah, there you go. So there is the spinal cannon, guys. For 7 seconds, it's hitting 5 targets in your frontal arc. You don't even, I mean, like, you can fire it without a target. So you can just like maneuver around and it will just anything, and it pulses every half a second. So anything in its frontal arc every half a second is going to get hit by it. It just does amazing damage. Yeah, so it's yeah, it's a hell of a lot of fun, guys. All right, so that is the ship, that is the build, that's how it performs in the Argala patrol. So like I said, I'm going to finish off here with I'll show you guys a parse that I did the other day in ISA, just so you can see what this actually can do. Just give me a moment here while I bring it up. And let's turn that on. All right, so here is the ISA parse. You can see it was 74, 75K DPS. You know, certainly not as good as it was pre-season 13, but for a season 13 parse, that's actually pretty good. That's actually my highest parse in season 13 is around 80K, so this is actually very good. So yeah, this is just the reality of season 13 is that it's really hard to get up to 100K now. You know, a lot of people are getting up to 100K. I think the record now is up to almost 200K, but still nowhere near what it was pre-season 13. I mean, the records pre-season 13 were like 500K. So yeah, the damage knockoff as far as the DPS meters go has been pretty crazy in season 13. It's just, you're literally doing like half the amount of damage. But anyway, this was a 74K run, and you can see the breakdown here. Of course, the vast majority of the damage is coming from the dual heavy cannons under Scatter Volley 3. That was 24K DPS about. The turrets, even the turrets themselves, just those two turrets in the back were doing 15K. The Nuskin Energy Torpedo was doing 9.7K. That's actually really, really good. Just for a single weapon slot, that's how much it was doing. Plus, you know, it's proccing your supercharged weapon trait, so good all around. Now look at this. That also, the Terran Task Force Heavy Disruptor by itself was doing 9.4K. So you can see that Nuskin Torpedo is definitely pulling its weight. It's doing as much as the Terran Task Force weapon slot, and certainly doing more than just a single of the dual heavy cannons. So that's really, really good. Next up is the heavy flak shot artillery. So you can see that was doing about 4.6K damage. Not the best out there, but you know, it's still worth slotting. It's about you know, it's at least a reasonable portion of the damage. Now my spinal cannons in this run, you can see they only did 4K, about as much as the heavy flak shot artillery. This was not my best run as far as the spinal cannons. I've gotten much better spinal cannons off than this. I've got them up to 6 to 7-ish K. I'll show you a CCA parse that I did where these did an ungodly amount of damage. But the rest of these, see, dual heavy disruptors, outside of cannon scatter volley, there was barely any shots. So they were doing about 2K, and then the Terran Task Force and everything else. Chemosight did about 1.4K, not bad for just an incident level ability, but and the turrets were doing about 800. So there you go. That was the breakdown for the ISA. So 74K is not bad. So this build can do you well, and certainly was enough to get through any normal queues like the Mirror Universe Invasion. So just give me a quick moment here. I'm actually going to pull up. Can I find it here? Crystalline. Yeah. So you can see here, this was a crystalline entity event. It's not showing the correct window, unfortunately, now, but you see it did 131K. And when I actually broke down the amount of damage that just the spinal cannons was doing, I'll just read it to you here. The spinal cannons by themselves did 23K. So like when you pull in all those Tholians into near the crystalline entity, and then you just launch off your spinal cannons, you could just watch a whole group of Tholians just melt. And so it was pretty amazing. So yeah, 23K of that was just from the spinal cannons out of that 131K. So yeah, so that was, just wanted to mention that. So the spinal cannons in this thing really hold their weight. None of the other spinal cannons that are just a single shot, like a spinal lance, like, you know, like on the Galaxy X or even on the Fayette, those are all just single shots. You're never going to get those kind of numbers out of a single shot lance. They are really nice for just taking out like a single hardened target really well, but nothing like what these spinal cannons can do. For that 7-second duration, it just absolutely destroys everything, and it fits perfectly well into a cannon scatter volley build. Alright guys, but that is it. That is the Tier 6 Klingon Mata Raptor. This is the fleet variant, and just a hell of a fun ship. Hopefully that helps everyone who was wondering what build I was using in the previous video with the Mirror Universe event. That was the full build, guys, and that is how it is updated as far as Season 13. Man, I just can't stop looking at this ship. This ship just looks amazing. There you go, with a little bit of lens flare. It's just, yeah, this is a hell of a lot of fun. I know there was a recent ship sale as well. People were requesting if they should buy this ship. I would say if a ship sale comes up and you like your KDF character, you cannot go wrong with this ship. Actually, let me just quickly say, if you are going to buy it, the trait you get with it is called Overwhelming Force. It's not the greatest trait in the world as far as starship traits, but believe it or not, it might actually be worth trying this again in Season 13, because, where is it? Overwhelming Force. Did I miss it? I'm not finding it here, but basically its Overwhelming Force would proc a, whenever you would use, what is it? Beam Overload, it would proc a, is it Charged Particle Burst or Photonic Shockwave? Let me pull it up here real quick. Alright, so when you did Beam Overload, it would give you a Charged Particle Burst, and when you did a High Yield Torpedo, it would give you a Photonic Shockwave. There you go. And now, since Beam Overload was actually quite significantly buffed in Season 13, which would make that trait maybe worth trying again. But yeah, it's not the best trait in the world, so if you're buying the ship for the trait, probably not. I wouldn't recommend getting the ship. But if you're just looking for a really fun KDF ship to fly, particularly a cannon ship, and you like the Spinal Lance, and you want sort of the Raptor style, you want something that's maneuverable and somewhat durable, maybe not as much as a cruiser, but still at least a little bit durable, you cannot go wrong with this ship. And this is definitely my favorite KDF ship. Just the balance of maneuverability, damage, frontal firepower, spinal cannon, everything about this works well together. And so there you go, guys. That is the Mata Raptor. Hope you enjoyed the build video. Thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.